Hello, this is Thinking Out Loud with Ian Currey. Today I'm taking up a challenge and trying to show how an everyday electrical device works, the humble transformer. You're quite likely to be using one right now without even thinking about it, but have you ever wondered how a transformer works? And how can I possibly apply that to life? Come on, let me tell you what I think. Growing up, I would sometimes hear my mum ask, "What were you doing hanging around with those hooligans? You don't want to end up like that, do you?" And usually what she was talking about was some ne'er-do-wells hanging around on the street corner outside our house. There was a motorbike shop right next door, and the corner was often where the local hooligans would find reason to hang out. Looking back, they were probably just watching people try out the array of shiny new motorcycles more than causing any actual trouble particularly. But they were significantly older than I was, and so I'm sure I would have been influenced one way or another by them if I had hung around with them. Now, I couldn't see why I couldn't just hang out there too. How could being near them make me like them? That's just silly. I just wanted to see people trying out the motorbikes too, although I've never really had an interest in motorcycles particularly. Perhaps I just wanted to be with the cool guys. Mums usually know best, don't they? But it may not have been quite as silly as I thought it was all those years ago. Being around people who say things and do things I knew were wrong would indeed start influencing the way I thought and acted. Paul had something to say about this in Romans chapter 12. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. But it's not just that we copy the behavior of people around us. The way others think can also start to impact our own ideas and even habits, even the way we speak or even dress. It's funny how that happens, isn't it? Today I want to show you how a transformer works. It's not magic, but it can seem like it if we don't know what's going on. Transformers come in all shapes and sizes, and here in America they're often seen on poles close to houses. But what do they do and why are they there? Electricity is fussy stuff. If it's going anywhere far, it likes to move around at high voltages. They're hard to work with and will bite you as quick as a flash. So electricity is moved around at high voltages, and that just keeps it happy. But right before it gets used, it's often changed to lower, safer voltages that are easier to work with. And that's the job of these kind of pole transformers. But there are all sorts of transformers. Let me show you a few you might recognize. These ones take the electricity in your house and make it into an even lower voltage so that it can be used to charge your phone or operate a computer or whatever. This little thing is a tiny transformer, but it really does exactly the same job as any other. It's just small. But how do they do that? Let's take a look. Now we're going to get a little bit technical for just a minute. There's a couple of things that you need to know to help understand how this all works. Every cable that has an electrical current passing through it generates a magnetic field around it. Usually it's very small and difficult to measure even, and certainly it's not very useful. But in certain conditions, this can be extremely powerful and even dangerous. And by coiling up cables, those magnetic fields get together and work together as one. And I'm sure there's a story to tell there too. You could say there's strength in numbers. They effectively gang up and get together. The energy used to make that magnetic field can either make the cable warm or be used to do useful work in other ways. This magnetic energy is very useful, and it can be really annoying too. It can make sensitive equipment do things it's not supposed to, or make radios buzz or hum, and so on. Every extra coil or turn of wire adds to that magnetic field and makes it bigger and stronger. Incidentally, that's why you should never use extension cables when they're coiled up. They can get really hot if you do because of this. To make use of these magnetic fields in a useful way, say in a transformer, we introduce something into the coil to help the magnetic field move to where we want it. The moving magnetic field is called magnetic flux, but that doesn't really matter what you call it. Long ago, transformers were made by winding wire around a metal donut thing. It looked a little bit like a donut, but that takes ages. I'll show you what I mean. But to make it easy, transformers and the coils were often made around either card or these days plastic formers. Here's one with the card missing. The wire is very, very thin, isn't it? If you don't know it's there, you'd hardly see it even. It's like a thin hair. The copper part is covered in varnish or something like that to keep the electricity in the right place. Now, there's something about the physics that always seems to work both ways. When something works one way, it usually works the other way too. So if you pass electricity through a wire, it makes a magnetic field. But just like so many things in physics, it does work backwards too. So if you pass a magnetic field past a wire, it generates electricity in it. That's clever, eh? Well now, I've wrapped wire around and around and around this loop, and so we have a coil producing a big old magnetic field running around this metal core. So if we put another coil of wire onto that core, it will end up with electricity getting induced into it by the magnetic flux moving around. It's called induction, but what you call it doesn't matter. It happens. That's the magic part. I hope you're keeping up. Don't worry if not, I'll show you in a minute and you'll see how it all works, and that's the fun part. Just a little deeper into the science of the thing first, just in case you are still following. So if we make this coil with say 240 turns and put 240 volts onto it, and my technical friends will tell me, no, don't do it. But let's just say we did and it was safe, and it probably wouldn't be. Then apart from getting very hot very quickly, a magnetic field would be produced. Now, let's say we put another coil of wire on the same metal core or donut with 110 turns of wire on it. In theory, if everything were working perfectly, then the magnetic field would induce 110 volts in that second coil. 240 on one side, called the primary, and because of fewer turns on the other coil, fewer volts. That smaller coil of wire is referred to as the secondary coil, just to help us know which one's which. There you go. Not a great looking transformer, but it might do the trick. So we'll have to see if this works. I'm expecting it to get rather hot, so I may have to be just a little bit quick, and please don't try this at home. You will have to remember that all sorts of bad things happen during some of my experiments, and some of them hurt quite a lot. Now this second coil is just a coil of wire wound onto a piece of plastic, just like you'd find in many transformers. I've connected a little light across the ends of the coil. There's nothing else, just the coil and a light. If you like, you can say this coil and light represents me or you. Now, it's a good thing this loop has a little gap in it, or I wouldn't be able to get the magnetic path to go through the middle of this coil. The coil isn't touching anything, and so the only way electricity can get there to make the light work is if we can get the magnetic field to do its job, just like the theory tells me it should. Let me turn on the electricity and see what happens. Aha! Now, if you see smoke, do let me know, won't you? Because this will get hot quickly for sure. If I join up the ends of the magnetic path properly by joining the metal together, it should work a lot better. There we go. And that clamp will hold it in place. So before I burn the house down, let's get back to our verse. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Can you see that to allow God to transform the way we think, we have to intentionally allow the special power God has to affect our lives? Now, I'm sure the transformer example will fall down if we push it too far. That or start a rather interesting fire, but certainly hanging around with God is going to allow Him to change us in ways we might not expect. That doesn't mean we can't have friends or hang out with people. What I'm saying is that we need to choose who we let influence our lives and thinking, because it happens even when we can't see it going on. Who do you allow to influence you? How do you let God transform you? Do you think differently after spending time with God? Now, please don't try making a transformer at home. Mine is already too hot to hold, and I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. I may find myself having to change my mind about carrying out these experiments in the house. Otherwise, I'm going to set something alight. This has been another episode of Thinking Out Loud with Ian Currey. If you've enjoyed this program, share it with your friends, subscribe or click the like button. And if you want to, leave a comment in the comments below. Until next time, goodbye.